Checks before you say I do.
Yes. Checks. Not that.
So this is not about love.
Red flag.
So that automatically disqualifies the...
Talking about what kind of things should you consider before getting married?
Well, I can flip it the other way.
What kind of blood type are you? Is our blood compatible for later on?
On earth would you bring it up in conversation?
All into their feelings. I love it. I love. And
Thank you.
thank you for making the comments.
Which comes first?
The chicken or the egg?
Which comes first? I know this topic is going to be very, very interesting.
Really?
I know that. How are you?
All the better for being on this next podcast. The prenup one we spoke about generated a lot of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for making the comments. And if you haven't seen the prenup one, you need to check somewhere on the screen here or in our bio.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay, so today's topic, you actually came up with that, and I love it. Checks before you say I do.
Yes. Checks before you say I do.
What do you mean?
And I'm not talking about checks as in checks in the post.
Okay.
I'm not talking about money. Checks. Not that we use checks anymore these days.
No.
Checks is one piece of paper like this that you will write on a marker, just in case some of you, it's a bit like what are one of those things that are totally obsolete? Cassettes. CDs.
Oh my God.
Anyway, we're talking about what kind of things should you consider before getting married. These are practical things that may affect the relationship later on.
So this is not about love.
This one is not about love. I keep telling you, BabaShola, love is not enough. And love doesn't pay the rent.
So love is not enough. And love doesn't pay the rent.
Have you not heard
but
that?
Isn't love the foundation? Shouldn't love be the foundation?
Love should definitely be the foundation. But love without wisdom and sense will make the love dissipate very quickly.
So which comes first?
The chicken or the egg?
Which comes first?
I think the checks come first, though.
The checks come first?
Of course.
So, okay. Tell us, what kind of checks? What kind of checks are you talking about?
Once you realize that you are in a relationship, obviously, as soon as you see it, I will always use myself as an example. And this is why I love the fact that we're now in an era where you can meet people in different ways. You can meet online. You can meet through introduction. Even if you meet somebody through introduction, there's some checks you should do before you start getting your feelings all involved. Before you are into your feelings, because, when people say I'm in love, they can be also out of love. Love to me is something that should be unconditional. So if you are going to have unconditional love, you have to make sure that the person that you want to have the unconditional love is somebody you feel like you can be sustainable with. So checks for me is about sustainability. It's about what are the things that cause divorce? Money issues. Agree? Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Money issues, communication issues, sex or lack of sex.
Yeah.
So you have to check that those three things can work for you. And I'm not saying try before you buy. All I'm saying is you have to check that those things can work for you.
So what are you going to check about money?
Have they got a good credit rating? If they are somebody that is bankrupt, for example.
So that automatically disqualifies the...
No, not necessarily.
The man that made the mistake. The young man that made the mistake.
Question. Red flag. If they're bankrupt, obviously in America, you can be bankrupt and start again. But if they're bankrupt or they have what in the United Kingdom we call a bad credit rating, that's a red flag.
But I can flip it the other way, Yewande, that chap, that young man that had bad credit rating could be because of his enthusiasm to make it in life.
Of
The
course,
guy is not just sitting on his whatever, but he's trying to make it happen.
No, I'm not saying that any of these checks is a reason not to get together with somebody, but there are things that should be put on the table for discussion. So, what is your credit rating like? We've said you should go and check your blood. Both of you, are you? What kind of blood type are you? Is our blood compatible for later on? We know now that there are different kinds of combinations that may result in children that will have health challenges. For example, within the Black community, for example, sickle cell. So you need to know your status. You need to know your status in terms of also whether you have any diseases, HIV, or some people don't disclose these things. They don't even know they have it. So it's more like check the things that may bring problem into your relationship later on and bring it down for discussion.
At what stage will that come up for discussion?
I believe when you've met a few times, you've realized that this is potentially going to be a long-term relationship that could lead to marriage. Do you understand? Even if it's not going to lead to marriage necessarily, I think those are good things to talk about because you are both discussing what your aspirations are for a potential future. Because a lot of people they just all into their feelings. I love it. I love, and then how is that going to sustain a relationship? So check if they go. It can be a discussion because BabaShola, you ask me, Abi, how do you bring it up in conversation?
How on earth would you bring it up in conversation? Is it the first date? Is it the second date? Is it the third date? And you say, oh, Yewande, by the way, so what's your blood type?
No, that is not how you bring it up.
How?
And this is why communication is an art form. It's not how. You take about what are your goals? What are your relationship goals? Have you ever thought about that? What are your relationship goals for this journey that we're about to embark on?
There are ways in which certain topics are brought up that can scare anybody away.
Well, this is why I love online dating. Yeah. Because that's where I met my husband. There were questions already that we had to both put in so people can go and do that initial sorting. And I remember when I was actually populating my own profile, there were questions the site was asking me that I hadn't thought about before. And it gave me food for thought.
So what happens if Sir Tonks had put in what you wanted to hear?
The thing is, at the end of the day, these things will be checked out when we have physical dates. But that one was just the initial check. So
like a filter.
Yes, like a filter. So for example, imagine one of our children, you have another friend, parents do those things. They say, oh, and my friend Lagbaja has a really lovely son or daughter that I think would be good for my son or daughter. You don't go and say to your son, my Lagbaja friend. You first of all talk to your friend to find out a bit more about.
I will be the one that will be doing the checking and the mom.
Exactly.
Rather than my son or daughter.
Yeah, but even so, you are doing a check.
Yeah.
Yes, and when they both imagine that you kind of now want to broker the relationship with your son or daughter, it's not unfair to say, at least I know my son. Let me speak for my own son. My son is a bit of an entrepreneur. So his antenna is always up about financial matters. And if some woman comes into his life, for example, I'm going to check if she's a gold digger. I'm going to check if she's into it for real. Me and you just watched a little clip just a few minutes ago where a young lady was talking about if she can't even start talking to a man if there's no money involved. He needs to first send some money into her account. Clearly, that shows that she's very materialistic. So, in the same way,
putting it mildly.
Exactly. In the same way, if somebody has a bad credit, and when I say bad credit, there are different reasons. I had a bad credit after my divorce. It took me years to clean up my credit. At least when I met my now husband, we discussed finances. We discussed our finances. Obviously, when you're in a second-time relationship, that you expect to do. But with the first time, I still think there are good things to check. Check the status in terms of any diseases, anything that anything they've inherited in their family.
How?
You will talk about it. Let me tell you. Let me do a bit of role play with you because I think you are having difficulty imagining it. So for me, it will be something like in our first or second date or third date, I like the guy, they like me, we are discussing because these are real issues that will make a big difference.
I agree.
And I'm interested in your thoughts. Put it down in the comment. Do you think you should do checks? Do you think you should do blood checks? Do you think you should check whether they're financially viable or not? It could be that they're new in terms of starting a new job, especially the younger ones. Do they have potential? What are their ambitions?
Now you are not talking my language.
Yes,
do they have potential?
Yeah, but you still discuss that potential. Yeah. If somebody says to you, for example, second day or third day, wow, this is our relationship. What are your relationship goals is one of the first things I'll say. What are your plans in the next 5 years?
After how many dates?
3 dates. Because for a woman, I don't know about men, for a woman, when you get to what I call marriageable age, that is to say you've done your education, you have started working or something like this, and you desire, because it's not for everyone. I believe you should be intentional. Ladies, I'm talking from a women's point of view. We have not been taught to be intentional about relationships. We have taught how to get a good degree, how to get a good job, but we live our sentimental life to que sera sera. No, we should not. We should be deliberate. So you should ask, what are your goals? And if the guy says, I see myself right now, I'm struggling.
Is that how you ask me? What are my goals?
I'll say, what are your goals for the next few years? Yeah, what are your goals? What are your plans?
You can ask me in a roundabout way that will not appear as if I'm in a classroom or is a teacher that is asking me like we are writing a project.
Okay, so what kind of conversations do you have on dates?
You should be able to decode it from not only my mannerism, but from answers. You can ask me, some questions that are not too direct. If you are too direct with me in a relationship at the beginning, or it's a red flag for me personally. I would say, where is this lady going to? It's like, what are your goals? Blood check.
No, but it's not all going to be like that. It's just something that will come out once you both. You see, when you are getting into a relationship, because remember, this is about the checks before you say I do. How long should you date for?
Okay. Yewande, before
because at the end of the day, you have to be intentional. My intention in getting into a relationship is for a purpose, even friendship. Let's just even
definitely. Before I answer that, do you know that I can bring up a conversation by saying that, we are having a good meal or we are watching a program, and I could just say, Yewande, you know what? My dad only discovered he was O type or A type or whatever type, and I had to go and check my blood type. What do you think? What's your blood type? I've introduced it in a subtle manner, rather than you ask me. So, BabaShola, by the way, what's your blood type?
That's not how you would say it. You would say it in the context of, do you know what? What are your relationship goals? That is the first question. Where do you see yourself in a few years before you come on to those ones? Now, if the person now says, my goal is to get married in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, then I know I'm in good company as a woman. If there's no marriage on the goal, and that's what I desire, then why am I wasting my time? Let me give you an example.
You are speaking from a lady's point of view, and I'm speaking from a man's point of view.
That's what I'm saying.
Direct is a little bit
too much in your face.
Too much.
All right, people, let's have
your comments.
Because let me tell you why I say that. There are some women, because you men, not necessarily you in particular, men in general, when they know what they want, they know what they want. They can ask a woman to marry them within 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. I knew when I met my wife for the first time, I knew she was the one I was going to marry.
Exactly. So, if that be the case, shouldn't a woman get that vibes quickly to know whether you are marriageable.
I love the
material
word
or-
you just use now, vibes, not Q&A.
Yeah,
There are
but it's
Q&A
not how you
session.
do it. What I'm saying is these are things you need to check. But how you do it is what we are disagreeing on.
Yes.
It will not be in an interview kind of.
Exactly, because
I'm
that
just
is
saying
scary.
that. What
It's
are your
scary for me.
relationship goals? Is that a bad question? I beg my people. What is it go in the comments? What are your relationship goals? Is that a bad question? What are your relationship goals? Okay, let me put it nice and soft.
Yeah.
Oh, BabaShola, we have been dating now for 6 months. Where do you see us going in the future? Is that a nice way to put it?
Yes, I said, what do you think?
Well, for me, my desire is in the next 2 years to get married.
Yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, that's what I have in mind as well. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know. So, where do you see yourself in terms of work and stuff like that?
Yeah, but we've been having several discussions over the past 6, 8 months. You know that I love writing. You know that I love, being in IT. And my goal is, to have my own book. My goal is to write my own book. My goal is to get into trading. My goal is to...
That's really beautiful. Very lovely indeed. And with that in mind, where do you see a woman in that relationship there with you?
Where do I see a woman? I know you have your own goals. I know you have your own aspirations.
Okay.
So my goal or my position is to support you to achieve your...
Wow, that's nice. And do you see that? Is there anything that you think we should now start thinking about then, if that's how we're both thinking?
Like what?
Anything that you feel might be a stumbling block to our relationship.
Like what?
For example, money. That's just a little role play.
It still appeared to me like a Q&A session, bro. It still appeared you're having you're having dinner and you're asking me to,
No, but
my wife, oh bless her. We've been together now for God knows how many decades. She knows how to get answers from me.
Oh, she's very good. In fact, I forgot to celebrate you to our audience. How many years? Couple of weeks ago, you celebrated your, was it 28th anniversary?
Yes.
Wow, well done. Well done. Congratulations. We need to learn from BabaShola. Okay, your wife, as you were saying.
She is very, very good at, because there's something that I've been banging on for years, timing. I can't be watching football. By the way, I support Manchester United.
Oh dear.
We went through a very, very difficult season, but he ended
Stories for other
days. I can't be watching football. And then she would then say, oh, we need to speak to Auntie this. It's her birthday.
Yes.
She won't do that.
No, because she knows. I mean, these conversations, you have to choose your moments. And I agree with you, but they need to be done. You have to check at some point, jokes aside now. Of course, we did that little role play because BabaShola was asking at what point, but make a note, I believe, of the things that you need to check. Their credit rating without snooping.
That credit rating beat.
Without snooping.
I'm not convinced by that.
Okay, let me tell you why credit rating is important. Yeah. If somebody is not very good with money, and they're constantly getting into debt, it's important to know how to manage that once you get together.
Or is it a deal breaker?
It can be, because I've known of situations where the husband, who is not very good with money, insists that he has to handle the money, and his whole family have been made homeless because of his reckless financial lack of financial prudence. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, but it gives you an indication of why, and what you may or may not be able to get into. I have a family member that is very close to home, so maybe I won't say, but as a result of the recklessness of one of the parties, they nearly lost their house. Fortunately, the other party had a good credit rating, and so they were now able to remortgage in that other person's name. So these things are not necessarily total deal breaker, but they help you to know how to navigate or even help and support each other. Do you understand? Like in some relationships, one person is the spender and one is more thrift. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something you can start planning early, how you support each other in it.
I agree with you 100%. But what I'm saying is, rather than being direct to ask, your credit status of a credit rating, you will find that out in the course of time.
How long?
And because
Not before you marry. It's got to be done before I do.
And because the woman, for me, I mean, men may disagree, but for me, the women are wise. Because women are wise, and a wise woman, because he who finds a good woman, a wise woman would steer the man and navigate the man and guide the man in a way that even the man won't, before the man discovers that, wow, I'm agreeing to my partner's investment tips or investment advice, the relationship will be on a good footing. Rather than, because I have a stain of bad credit rating, you are not looking at me from a different angle.
BabaShola, I agree with you. How it's done is diplomacy is required. But I'm dealing with the fact that it has to be done. And it doesn't have to be a Q&A, but it can be done in fun ways. It can be done with, okay, what are the things that are potentially deal breakers? Let's do like do you understand?
Yeah.
It's, for example, there are some men that they don't want their wives or anybody they know to even touch their phone, much less be able to look through it. To me, that's a deal breaker.
That's a deal breaker. Or for for a man not to be free to give the wife or the girlfriend like code. What's it called?
The code on your phone.
Code on your phone.
Now that's interesting, because this is for some people. They'll say, what you don't know don't hurt you. Don't ask for my phone. Don't ask me. You have your phone. I have my phone. But what does that say about trust? And I remember, funny enough, this is a true story. After my husband and I got engaged, I remember one time I went to see him at his place, and I went with my friend. He's a very good cook. He made nice tilapia fish, and my friend was happy to come and eat my fiance's tilapia fish. Anyway, his phone was ringing, and I wanted to pick. I said, no. I said, what? I said, no.
After how many years? After how many?
That's how I'm wise now. We were already engaged. This was like some 3 years ago. I said, yes, no. I said, why? I'm picking the phone. If I don't pick that phone today, my friend said, see my life. I just came to eat fish. I said, I'm picking that phone. He said, no, I'm not picking the phone. I said, hey, you want us to be married and I cannot pick your phone? I said, I'm going to break off this engagement. My friend said, is it that deep? I said, it's that deep. So I took the ring, African drama, took the ring, threw him. I told my friend we're going. We went to, my friend was telling me in the car. I said, no. I have to make him to understand that we can't go any further if I can't check his phone. So anyway, suffice to say, we sorted that one out. But there are things that we didn't even discuss it before. And he's never had that before. Do you see?
Yewande, I agree with you. But checks before you say I do. But it has to be not in a Q&A session. It has to be done in a fun manner. Okay, medical checks. That is important. I understand. However,
hereditary factors, where you are coming from a family where there's a history of something, so that you will know how you navigate each other.
Yeah, but there's no such thing as perfection.
No, we're not talking about it's all about management.
How many, if you have 10 checks, what's the percentage that you have to go through? What's the pass mark?
The pass mark is as many of them that you can discuss and work out as a couple how you're going to navigate them. It's not a pass or fail situation, BabaShola. It's a discussion that has to be had, which a lot of people don't have. And then when they get into their relationship, I know people who have married people who had sickle cell, their status was such that it affected their relationship. In the end, they ended up breaking up because one party thought, it wasn't a big deal. Whereas if they had been more conscious of planning, of how, I'm not saying you shouldn't marry somebody who has the full blown, but you need to know the stakes, and you need to know you can balance, because as you know, you have to make sure that you are not a carrier. If you have somebody that's a full blown, to make sure that when you do have children, there's just so many things, and you can be friends. At the end of the day, you might decide that, what, we might put too much strain on each other if we got married. Let's just stay as friends. That's not a bad thing, because it's all about relationship management.
I understand 100%. However, does it mean that if all these checks are ticked, that the relationship has a better rate of surviving?
Of course, darling. If money
what about those that have everything in place and still
that's to do with bad character? At least the things that, yes, because you can be, like you rightly said, you can have check. What I'm saying is, why put pressure on the relationship? I believe we discussed one time about in-laws and outlaws. And one of the things we said is, it's not that you won't get married if both in-laws are not in agreement. But why put unnecessary strain on
So that's a check as well, to see.
Of course, if both families are in agreement, why put strain? Don't forget, marriage is a long life commitment till death do you part. For some people, it could be 50 years. And you have to learn how to get along. Some people, obviously, you can say, what about people who have arranged marriage? They don't have to discuss all of that. But their parents, like you rightly said, would have done those checks for them. So there's still some level of checking. And even when we were talking about prenuptial agreements, somebody put in the comment that in Jewish tradition, that there's a form of prenup that the families have already agreed that if you divorce our daughter or divorce our son, for whatever reason, you will pay back this. These are good practice. Why do we go and have a legal license when we get married? It's for our protection. We can say we've done a church wedding or we've married in the mosque or whatever, and that's enough. But the legal aspect is for protection, so that if somebody else messes up and they don't want to do the right thing by the other person, you have a legal means of holding them accountable.
We're coming back to this.
Please let us know your thoughts.
There has to be a part 2. Checks before you say I do.
Checks before you say I do.
I'm still getting my head around this crazy check and anyway. We'll come back to this. But let's have your comments and your thoughts about what checks do you think is important to do before you say I do. Yeah. I agree that we must have checks, but I think the disagreement is how we go about it. I don't think we are even disagreeing. Yeah. I'm just saying it needs to be had. Yeah. And you don't want it over dinner. No. You don't want it while you're watching Man U on television. It shouldn't be a Q&A session. It's like I'm back. But you should have it. But you should still have it.